This is New Zealand, Aotearoa. We're blessed with great mountains, beautiful sweeping beaches, and wild rivers. Over 180,000 kilometres of them. As a mountainous island chain in a boisterous corner of the world's largest ocean, our rainfall can be massive, making our rivers turbulent and unpredictable. I'm Craig Potton, and I've been photographing New Zealand landscapes just like these for 40 years. I just love it. It's my passion. Making art out of the mountains, out of the forests, out of the coastline, and out of our rivers. For me, they are the arteries that connect everything together. I'm going to travel some great New Zealand rivers, each one with its own story.
Wow, look at that.
I'll meet people who care for rivers and the creatures which live in and around them.
What a beautiful little that is.
I'll journey between source and sea and try to understand how rivers have shaped the land and influenced our culture. But above all, I want to see if we can use our rivers wisely and protect their wildness for our children. When it comes to New Zealand rivers, they don't come any bigger than the Clutha. The Waikato may be slightly longer, but this great waterway has by far the biggest flow. The volume of an Olympic swimming pool passes by every 4 seconds, and with it have flowed the hopes and dreams of generations, striving to make their fortune from greenstone and gold, hydropower, tourism and wine. This is the mighty Clutha. I'll be visiting some of the sources of this great river. I'll travel downstream through beautiful central Otago, past gold and wine country in the massive Clyde Dam, and on through Alexandra, Beaumont and the Rangahere Gorge, all the way to the river mouth at the Pacific Ocean. And this is where it all starts, high up in the Southern Alps, where the winds of the roaring 40s hit the high mountain ranges, rain and snow fall in abundance. I'm visiting one small part of the Clutha's giant catchment area, which encompasses 22,000 square kilometres in total. This is Mount Earnslaw right behind me, and I actually wish I was climbing to the top today. It's such a perfect day. This is the source, one of the many, many sources of the Clutha River. 60 kilometres of this high mountainous country with this locked up ice behind it and free-flowing waterfalls below it is what creates New Zealand's largest river. It pours out of rivers like the Hunter into Lake Hawea, the Makaurora and the Matukituki into Lake Wanaka, and over here where we are, the Dart and the Rees pouring into Lake Wakatapu. These are major, major river systems all converging to make the Clutha the single largest river in New Zealand. I feel very privileged to be up here in this pristine wilderness. This is a part of the world few people ever get to see.
These beautiful, exquisite gardens, not of our making, are exactly why I love coming to the mountains. I mean, grass is just frozen in time, zen-like mosses, shiny schist rocks, water just mesmerically falling out of the sky. I look up and it's just coming in slow motion and it rushes and hits the schist rock. I mean, to me, these are the essence of the Southern Alps. They're the essence of what we don't get in the city, what we don't get even out in the country, and why we need to seek out wilderness.
All around me, water is cascading down. As the snow melts and the water runs downhill, right here, one of the Clutha's many sources begins to flow. But because rain and snow aren't constant all year round, rivers need a bit of help during the dry summer months, which is where our wetlands come in. They are like giant sponges which absorb water during wet periods and then release it slowly during the dry spells. I'm off to visit a very rare type of wetland at the head of the Nevis Valley with renowned ecologist Sir Alan Mark.
This is a very special landscape feature, special ecological feature, and in terms of water production, an extremely important hydrological feature because it stores water in heavy rains and releases it in drought periods like we have now. so that the low flows coming out of this wetland are constant and extremely valuable for water yield and water flow down valley. We find that about 86% of our measured rainfall finishes up in the streams as water yield. 86%, that's a world record. The snow tussock which surrounds it is very important in supplementing the water intake.
Right.
We can see a tussock just here. They're amazingly conservative of water use. Moreover, they're extremely efficient in catching water. These very fine leaves extract the moisture out of fog. We've shown that a tussock like this can strip a half a litre of water an hour from a fog when there's no measurable rainfall.
So we know Mitre Peak, we know the kiwi, we know a number of our icons, but you as an ecologist, I guess you would see this as an icon.
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing like it in New Zealand. It's special, it's internationally recognised, it's right up there.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
This is rather neat. I'm walking on a bog of sphagnum and sedges. It's actually a floating bog. It's floating on about 1 metre of water underneath it, and I'm floating on top of it, which is very cool. It's like being on a large sponge, but just cruising over the top. It's a very fragile place, and I find myself almost a little anxious about walking around because you disturb it so much. Such soft substrate below me. We can't just let lots of people come up here because of their fragility. So it's especially wonderful to me to be able to come here and experience them, to encounter them, to take some photographs that I hope I can take back to people and just show what hidden gems there are in New Zealand. From high up in the central Otago Mountains, we can see just how all that water flows into the big southern lakes. This is the Dart River, and it is one of the major feeder rivers of the Clutha. It's also one of the best examples you will see anywhere of the effect of the glaciation. Just 10,000 years ago, major glaciers poured through the Southern Alps, and one came straight down the Dart here, thousands of metres up on the side. It compressed the valley floor. It pushed the sides of the mountains out into the U shape that's classic glacial country. At the terminal face of this glacier, a large block of ice formed. It melted slowly and it formed Lake Wakatapu. After the glaciers, many of the gravels that have been ground up in the mountains during that period spread out across this landscape, carried by the Dart River into what we call a braided river system. They're extraordinarily unusual around the world. This is one of the very better examples you will see anywhere. And here, today, in this late afternoon light, it is great for mountain photography. Coming up, I seek my fortune in the central Otago goldfields. The Clutha River is fed from a massive catchment area starting high in the Southern Alps. Feeder rivers flow into the big southern lakes, Hawea, Wanaka and Wakatapu, which act as giant holding tanks for the tributaries which form the Clutha. The Southern Maori tribe, Ngāi Tahu, has a long association with the river they call Mata-o. I'm joined on Lake Wakatapu by an eminent Ngāi Tahu leader, Sir Tipene O'Regan. As a boy, I remember the story of a Maori demigod digging great holes through the South Island and making the lakes. And the shape of this lake is renowned for the demon that stole the girl that the warrior
Well, there's always a demon, and there's always a warrior, and there's always a girl, and all these stories. The tradition, of course, is that Matau, the taniwha, was chased up here, and he was killed, and he was cremated or burnt. And his the fat and the fire and the intensity burnt this great hole, and then it was filled with water.
How do you think your people first came here?
A lot of the exploration of this area, of course, is to do with pounamu and to do with other valuable stones, the flints and working stones, because it was a culture with no sort of metal. They came here and surveyed the whole of this landmass and named it very, very early in the Polynesian story, about 800 years ago.
The river and the lakes, I mean, they're not an end in themselves. Often Māori, they were a through path to...
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And this is where the cultivation of the mokihi, the reed raft or boat, was brought to a refined level greater than anywhere else in Polynesia.
While Maori came here in search of greenstone, for the European, the big attraction was gold. The Central Otago gold rush began southeast of here in Gabriel's Gully in 1861. Over the next few years, around 18,000 prospectors flooded into the region, all hoping to make their fortune from the precious metal. The Central Otago landscape is dotted with relics from the gold rush. I'm heading to the old settlement of Sephistown with local historian Angela Very. So one of the first families to come in here to find gold and work it was in fact of Russian descent, I understand.
Yes, Vasilo Seferovich, or as he became known, Sefer, he actually arrived the day after word got out among everyone that there was gold here. So when he arrived, according to his sons, there were around 2,000 miners camped down along the shores of the river. So he wasn't the first one here by a long shot, but his family lived here for the longest.
So that's why it's called Sephistown.
Yeah, and they lived here up until about 1939, 1940.
So here is the Seferovich buildings, but are they the original ones, do you think?
No, when the first miners all came and lived along Moat Creek in 1863, they would have all lived in tents. But right. As the family became more settled, this would probably be date around the 1880s, these buildings back here.
Do we know how many at the peak were actually in this very small locale?
We've got no specifics, but just general estimates range between 2,000 to 3,000 miners living in here in Moat Lake and in Moonlight as well, which is just a wee bit further up.
And how long did that last? I mean, 2,000 or 3,000 people here. When did it taper off, do you know?
The Moat Lake rush in itself, it was a short-lived rush, 2 years maximum, but they did have quite good success in what they found in terms of alluvial gold here.
And then later on, of course, in the Clutha, became infamous for the fact that it had 180 dredges, and I think the most dredged river in the world, someone said.
Yeah, well, again, it's that same concept as they just dig up, instead of getting the gold from the hillsides, they're trying to find the gold that was deposited in the riverbed itself. So they had big, sort of like a conveyor belt, and they'd have claws that would come along and just break up the river, and then the next item on the conveyor belt was a big bucket that would scoop it up, bring it up onto the boat, and they would use that same really simple process of using the water to wash away the sand and the silt and reveal the gold.
And it revealed a lot of gold, didn't it? I mean, the Clutha, in world terms, it's a big river for gold, isn't it?
It is a very big river for gold. They had nuggets as well as lots of little tiny, the flecks of gold that you look for, the alluvial gold.
So we look at today, this morning, on quite an idyllic scene, but we certainly don't see much indication of several thousand people toiling away, whole villages, you know, post office, shops. I mean, when we look down there, what remains? I mean, I can't see very much at all, to be honest.
There's the old schoolhouse remains down there, and if you look carefully, you'll be able to see poplars sort of planted in a box shape, and that would have been the windbreak for the house. So there's lots of remains like that and hedges.
Now, if the gold value raises another few $100 an ounce, will people come back here?
I think so. There's definitely interest. It has been raised in people sort of looking to revive old gold mining towns. There's been interest out in Macetown as well. So
there's still gold in them there hills.
There's still gold in them there hills.
And while I'm in gold country, I'm tempted to try my luck. There are two places, and two only really, where you're likely to find gold. One is in the Motherlode in the hills, that's in the schist rock and in the bands of quartz, and associated with that, the gold lies out. But very few people, and virtually no one in the Clutha, found it that way. Almost all of them found it in the river, exactly where I am, and they started off doing exactly what I'm doing, which is just panning for gold. But very quickly, the greed for gold drove methods that were quite destructive on the river. They started to make large waterworks and waterways that drove the water in high pressure to get under the banks to scour up the banks, to work their sluice boxes. And even worse, during the early 1900s, they got into these huge dredges. That just scoured out the whole bottom of the river beds. That would have taken away all the fish habitat and been quite destructive. It takes a long time for a river to recover from that sort of treatment. But for the Clutha, there was worse to come. Up next, how man changed the face of the river forever. This is extraordinary. This is New Zealand's greatest river, the biggest river we have in New Zealand, the Clutha, pouring through the slipway at the Clyde Dam. And it just astounds me what humans can do to nature, to one of our wildest rivers, to just channel it to such a narrow scope and let it pour through this great concrete structure. Absolutely astounding. Never mind the gold rush. The biggest single event to change the face of the Clutha River was the construction of this, the Clyde Dam. It's New Zealand's third biggest hydroelectric dam after Manapuri and Benmore, and one of the most controversial. Back in the 1970s, there was huge opposition to the dam because of what it would do to this extraordinary area. But the project went ahead in the name of progress, flooding houses and orchards in the iconic Cromwell Gorge, and creating the 26 square kilometre Lake Dunstan, where there was once a free-flowing river. Today, I'm getting a guided tour of the dam with Daniel Druce from Contact Energy. So that's an extraordinarily high slipway. I mean, how high is this dam compared to others?
Well, this one's about 60 metres high above ground as we look at it. But you've got to remember there's another 40 metres that is going underground from this point.
So it's 100 metres?
About, yeah, nominally.
I mean, almost everywhere in New Zealand has problems with earthquakes, and I know it's the case down here as well, with all the work done when they were building the dam. I mean, how do you mitigate it against our unstable land?
Well, obviously you build the biggest, strongest dam you can. The dam's keyed into the rock on the sides of the dam. It's keyed in on the base of the dam as well. It's a million cubic metres of concrete, so it's fairly heavy. Clyde's also got a special feature, and then we've got what's called a slip joint here, which allows the dam to move in an earthquake and just ensure that its integrity
Concrete
remains.
Moving?
Yes.
What's the actual join made of?
Oh, there's a big stainless steel plug that is able to move inside a very large earthquake.
That's extraordinary. Yeah, how much power do you get out of this dam on New Zealand level? What are we supplying?
We used to be able to say we powered Dunedin on an average day.
That's enough power for around 100,000 people.
But unfortunately Dunedin's grown a little bit, so. But you get the idea of size, it's big.
We're heading down for a rear look inside the dam itself. And what's extraordinary is that not one, but two huge concrete walls have been built side by side. This is one of them, and this is the other one, and there's a gap of about, 2 metres between them. That's to absorb the mother of all earthquakes. It'll probably never happen, but if it did, they could compress together a little. But to me, it's like the mines of Moira in something like a Lord of the Rings movie. You look up, a massive cathedral-like concrete structure. Absolutely extraordinary. And I guess in the worst of all earthquakes, we'd see these coming together a bit.
I don't think we'd be here in the worst of all earthquakes.
You make a good point. How long is the lifespan of this dam, do you think?
It's a very long time. For example, Roxburgh Dam, which was built in the 1950s, has just been reconditioned and is as good as the day it was made. So we expect the Clyde Dam will be here for a very long time.
So we've got Clyde just downstream here. I mean, how safe are the people in Clyde?
Oh, they're absolutely safe. There's no question of that. They've been living with the Clyde Dam since, must be 25 years as a minimum now, so they've lived through it all.
I'm curious to hear what the locals think after living so long in the shadow of the dam. I mean, at the time there was a great deal of controversy. It was national about the dam. How do we feel these days in this area?
On the whole, I think there's been certainly gains. We live in Ernstcleugh, which is on the other side of the river, and we've ended up getting the best irrigation scheme in central Otago because of that dam. All gravity fed, no cost. Absolutely brilliant.
While there may have been gains for irrigation, for local orchardists like Peter Paulin, there were major losses.
Fruit growing is very strong here. Like Clyde here we have about 80 fruit growers. Today we've got about 6. The whole family's You went to the pub. If you didn't talk about fruit, you weren't in the crowd, you know what I mean? So in that respect, it's changed dramatically because there's no fruit growers at the pub now.
And for sports people like kayaker Gordon Rayner, the river has changed for the worse.
There's a really good rapid at Cromwell where we used to, grade 3 rapid, we used to do a lot of kayaking there. It was kind of the benchmark for kayaking in those days for kayakers from Southland and Otago. And a really good grade 2 run all the way through the Cromwell Gorge down here to
That's a long run.
Yeah, no, it's a big long run. It was really good. So, you know, that's now gone. It took me a long time to get over the dam because we had lost so much amazing white water. And we were such a silent, small minority of people who had lost, you know, a big chunk of our recreational resources. But, you know, I got over it in time.
And this is the effect of the dam. Up here was the wild Clutha River. It actually had some wonderful apricot orchards on the edge of it too. That's now Lake Dunstan. Over here, well, this is Cromwell, but it isn't Cromwell as it used to be. The old Cromwell, well, that's some 20 metres down under the lake here that's been created by the dam. And that's the Kawarau River flowing in. They were two wonderful wild rivers. Most of the original town was cleared for safety reasons, so all that's left beneath the surface is the old Cromwell Bridge. I'm curious to hear what other effects the dam has had on this waterway. Hi.
How you doing, Craig?
Good, good. Cold out there?
Oh, it's not too bad in dry seats, mate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, big eels down there, lots of fish life or anything?
I wish so, but no. It's fairly, I believe that the water feels fairly a little bit stagnant, and I think I've only ever seen about 2 trout there and the odd very small native bullyfish, but very little fish life and not a lot of freshwater native plants, just a lot of oxygen weed choking things up, really, yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's hard to say, but it's just not really natural, and I just don't think that the environment is, best the way it was, really.
The dams here and further downstream at Roxburgh have changed the landscape of the Clutha forever. But there are proposals to build up to 4 more dams on the Clutha and another 2 on its tributary, the Nevis. I'm heading up the remote Nevis Valley with Nomad Safaris and an old comrade-in-arms, Forest and Bird Field Officer Sue Maturin. Sue and I fought to save Westlands forests back in the 1970s, and now she's determined to save the Nevis. So Sue, the dam proposal, where's the dam going to be and how much land will it flood?
It's going to be 2 dams, one dam down here and another one further down, and it's going to flood this part of the river and it will de-water right down by the confluence with the Kawarau River. It's the best part for kayaking. And then it will flood this entire valley as far as the eye can see, up to those foothills there.
So there's plenty of rivers in Otago. Some people might say this is just another one, surely.
But there's not plenty of rivers that don't have dams, that don't have irrigation takes off it. And this is one of the last Central Otago rivers of any consequence that has no dams, no irrigation. It's pretty much unmodified and it's flowing in its natural state, right from up in the headwaters in the Nokamai down to the confluence of the Kawarau.
A dam in this valley would threaten several plant and animal species, including a rare forget-me-not, a freshwater fish called Gollum galaxius, and the Nevis skink. So, there's some wonderful natural history values, but there's a human history to this landscape to preserve too.
Yeah, Nevis has a real legend. There's a kind of mythology attached to the Nevis. Everybody knows about it. It's this distant, remote place that has a long goldfields history. Believe it or not, there were 5,000-6,000 people living in this valley. We had one town here and another town further down the valley. So we're going to lose a unique part of New Zealand's history as well as unique ecosystems. And we'll lose some of the best, most challenging kayaking to be found in New Zealand and even in the world. It's world-renowned kayaking in the Lower Nevis.
People say the reason we're doing this, not because we love dams as such, but because we need power. How do you answer that?
We do need power, and many people think that hydro is renewable. The water's renewable, but the ecosystem that you destroy when you create a dam and a lake, that's not renewable. No other generation would ever see what you and I are seeing here now, because once the dam's here, this ecosystem will be gone.
Questions around the Nevis River make me very reflective. I mean, I'd rather just sit at a place like this and just hear the river song, just let the river flow, just allow it to be. But we have to be aware that people do require power. People want to dam rivers for irrigation. We also have to be aware, though, that there's a limit to how far we can go. It does seem at this stage in our society that we have gone a long, long way to destroying the natural and wild qualities of our rivers of the east coast of the South Island. We do need power, but is the price now just getting too high? Our wild rivers are as important as our forests. We've protected all of our forests. It's probably time we thought seriously about protecting all that's left of our wild rivers. After the break, I take my life in my hands with intrepid kayaker Hugh Kennard. Over the years, the Clutha has lured generations seeking their fortune from greenstone and gold, and most recently, wine. In less than 30 years, the Central Otago wine industry has grown from nothing to a $150 million a year business, due mostly to the area's world-renowned Pinot Noir. I'm visiting the godfather of Central Otago wine, Alan Brady, who planted his first vines here at Nevis Valley in 1981.
And the evidence at the time was that you can't grow grapes in Central Otago. And so I have a stubborn streak, so I thought, well, why not? Let's give it a try.
Alan's grapes are planted beside one of the Clutha's tributaries, the Kawarau, and the river plays no small part in the vineyard's success. Microclimates, I mean, do you think they're related to the river at all?
Well, we think it is. And if you look in Europe, a lot of the great wine regions are on the banks of rivers, the Rhine, the Mosel, the Rhone in France, and many others. And they're there for a reason. Sloping land that faces the right direction, the moderating influence that the river has on the climate, and that works in this valley. This river is a very fast-flowing river that drains the cold air away, creates a draft that helps to disturb the air and keep us relatively frost-free. We loved that river, and the look and the sound and the influence that it had. And wine is one of those very few products that can reflect a unique thing. The wine we make here can't be made anywhere else. It reflects this valley.
I'm in for a special treat. A visit to Alan's remarkable underground cellars.
A totally different environment in here.
It's totally taken a while for my eyes to adjust. Oh, this is absolutely wonderful, Alan. You've buried right into the banks of the Clutha River.
In the bowels of the schist.
The schist,
yes,
yeah, the
yes.
200 million year old schist.
Well, it was a logical thing to do because in Europe they've stored wine underground for centuries.
So why is it good for wine to store it inside a cave in the side of a hill?
It's a great environment for wine. It's stable. That's the most important thing. Temperature doesn't vary. Humidity's about right. And all of those things allow the wine to mature gracefully.
So this is the library?
Yes, this is the Holy of Holies. 25 years of winemaking history in here, Craig, including some very old bottles. This is a pretty significant old bottle. This was a 1990 Pinot Noir from one of the first that created any attention for Central Otago Pinot Noir. It won a silver medal at the Easter show and created a lot of interest, not just in New Zealand, but overseas as well. And it's still tasting extremely good.
A lot's been written about our mountains, our forests, and our coastlines, but there are too few voices for our rivers. Some shine out, like painter Petrus van der Velden and his brooding cataract painting from the Otero Gorge, James K. Baxter's love affair with the Whanganui River. And right here on the Clutha, poet Brian Turner, and perhaps our greatest writer, Janet Frame, who wrote,
I now came face to face with the Clutha, a being that existed through all the pressures of rock, stone, earth and sun, linked to heaven and light by the slender rainbow that shimmered above its waters. I felt the river was an ally, that it would speak for me.
Alexandra in the autumn is extraordinarily beautiful, and it's here that I am meeting Dame Jillian Whitehead, a leading New Zealand composer whose work has been hugely affected by the Clutha. She has written a piece for clarinet called Mata O, inspired by this great river.
As I was writing it, the river was flowing past the window where I work, and I kept looking at it, and I'd been very taken with the idea of the two currents that flow, the deep one, which is what makes it a very dangerous river, and the slower one on top, and the interaction between the two. Mata'ao refers to various concepts. Could be like the wake of a giant canoe, like moko, quickly written on the surface of the water, and the meaning of current and layer. And so all those came into the piece. I hadn't spent much time by the river until I came here, but since I've been here, it's probably the foremost thing in my mind, really.
Right. Runs right through your life at present.
Yes.
Literally.
Yep.
And how would you like people to regard this river in the future, and do you think your art would help people see it a certain way?
If anything that I write helps people to preserve the river, preserve it as it is, not tame it, that's great.
Wait.
I am. I'm heading down the next stretch of river with my old mate Hugh Kennard. Hugh's an intrepid kayaker, but today we've chosen a more sedate way to travel, this dinky little inflatable raft.
Stop paddling. Say I fell over.
Yeah.
And I'm in the water, and I'm right down here. My head will be there.
I know this one. I know this
how
one.
To get me in there? Okay. You grab me by the hair.
You down you go. I grab here.
And you pull me into the boat.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then I grab
Then you fall in. Then you fall in the process.
No, I stay. Oh, I've lost my paddle.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's right, I got
dropped
one.
the paddle. And I'm nervous to see that even on this supposedly quiet stretch of the Clutha, there's clear evidence of white water.
You see these eddies? You keep away from those sort of swirly things. Yeah. So we've got nice white water waves here. This is big enough. Look at the size of that. Oh, God, isn't that big? Whoa.
I don't like that. No. Look at that. It'll all
okay, keep going, mate. Keep going. It's not over till it's over. No. There's still swirly bits down here. No, these look quite big, don't they? Yeah. Whoa. Man, look at these whirlpools. I know we don't want to be in there. No. Keep away from that one. We keep paddling, right? Yes.
I mean, how many people actually use our rivers?
Well, Spark did a survey a couple of years ago, and there were 209,000 something people went kayaking, and that's about the same number as played netball. And it's also a wee bit more than actually those people who indulge in snow sports like skiing and snowboarding. So it quite surprised me, and it just shows you that we like our rivers, we like our estuaries, we like our coastline for just poddling around in boats.
Yeah.
And there's some of us who like to do these journeys, and we're following the footsteps of some of the rather brave people, the original Maori explorers, and who did this on flax-stalk rafts, which I just absolutely am amazed that they would tackle this river in its days before the dams.
When the big rapids were there.
The big rapids, talk about 11 rapids of 11 feet high. Well, that's absolutely incredible.
3 metres or so.
3 metres, yep.
It's distressing to learn that even this far down the Clutha, there's the threat of yet another dam.
Right where we're paddling now is the site of one of the proposed dams that Contact Energy want to build on this river, another dam. And we'll end up with a whole lot of steps of lakes instead of what I would think of as a living, wild, continuous river. And I think we need to have a really serious debate about whether we need the energy and what do we need it for and what are we losing. I'm not suggesting we all freeze to death in the dark. No way. What I'm saying is that because there are so few of our rivers left, we really need to look at alternatives like wind and photovoltaic and saving energy and insulating houses and all those sort of things. And we need to put a much higher priority on doing those sort of things than we do for just going after the fact, well, there's a river, let's dam it. I think it would be really important for the next generation of New Zealanders to be able to do what we're doing now. I'd hate to think that this would just be a big flat lake.
Coming up, I take a very large punt, to a pecker style. This is a bit like one of these American Cup boats, and I feel a bit out of control on it, actually. I'm taking the fast route down this stretch of the Clutha with Beaumont Jet Tours to visit a character named Bill Dacker.
Hey, good to meet you.
Bill lives half his time in an unusual riverside retreat built by his father 80 years ago.
Wow, so this is the patchwork house.
The patchwork house, yeah. The recycled house, really. It's,
yeah.
So there's an old gold mining flume pipe.
A gold mining flume for the
Yeah, that my father found somewhere around here, and he put this place together. There's a Model T Ford window on the other side, you know, totally recycled, but in the 1920s. But it was the cook hut when I was growing up, and the building at the back there was very much smaller, and that was the main sleeping building.
Yeah. This is the villa.
This is the villa.
So can we look inside?
Yeah, absolutely. My humble home, as it is.
Very homely.
These beams here, these Carnuka poles, were the original roof of the building, original building here, which was a shed to dry the deerskins, as Dad was a deer culler in those days. This place has been added on to. Dad did most of it as the family grew. The river dominates the place. The sound of the river is our constant companion.
Yeah, we can hear it now. Because I kind of think of this as a river cottage, but I guess it was home. I mean, were there lots of homes similar to this in what we call the old days?
This was sort of unique, I think, to the era that I remember at Beaumont. There were lots of little huts once upon a time upon the river, that's true. But we're probably the last of them.
Bill takes me to an outstanding spot in the Rangahere Gorge. The kilometre-long Birch Island has been described as an ecological Noah's Ark. As a conservationist, this is the most important part in the whole Clutha River, below the Dart River, below the major lakes before we get to the ocean. And the reason for that is that this is native forest. It's all that's left of what once completely covered this whole area. What's it like around here? What sort of species are we mainly seeing?
Well, here we're seeing an understory of small tortora, a lot of small tortora. The top story is a lot of mountain beech. There's a wee bit of red beech amongst it.
How was it left here when it was cleared everywhere else by Maori moa hunter first, and of course then by Europeans?
What was left? What was left? Well, it's just this little corner, you know, the roads came in from that side, but they didn't go any further. The roads came down this way, they didn't go any further, and it left this bit here untouched, except by the sawmillers. The sawmillers took out all the worthwhile tortora and matai, but they didn't take it all. What's phenomenal is the undergrowth and the amount of small tortora tree. If you just look around here, there's so many you end up not being able to count them all. So this will be a big tortora forest one day, because they will grow, keep growing. These other trees don't live as long. They'll fall over and die.
And it also provides some sort of habitat for special creatures, huh?
That's exactly right. And so, you know, rats don't get across the swift river on both sides. That's the main thing. Rats and mice. No, not here at all. Not only are the birds that live here safe from predation, such as the kakariki, but it means also the understory that the insects that live down here, they're safe from predation.
It's from places like this that you could get regeneration.
Yes, absolutely.
You could get the old New Zealand back.
Yes. So healthy looking. You know?
Cool. Let's go. When all the land for miles around has been lost to development, it gives me hope to see a small pocket of native forest surviving in the middle of the river. Bill has seen the river change dramatically in his lifetime due to the Roxburgh Dam, some 40 kilometres upstream.
These banks were shaped like that once, and now they're like that. That gravel bed behind us there was way up there, and it's shifted down here. I mean, the gravel always shifts in a river like this, but there's no gravel replacing that gravel because of the dam has really changed that flow.
And like many on this river, Bill is living with the threat of another proposed dam, which could flood this entire area. What do you hope for the future for the river?
I guess what one looks for is that it will stay here. Even as it is, it's just wonderful, you know. I mean, I referred to it once as being sick, and I suppose the silt on the rock, it's a sign of its sickness. But it doesn't really matter. The river's still here. It's wonderful. If they build another dam down there, it won't be. So, you know, and that's a real worry. Everyone in this community here have been living for a number of years with this sword sort of poised and it's been not very pleasant really, so we hope that's resolved.
I'm heading downstream to where the Tuapeka River joins the Clutha. At Tuapeka Mouth I have to cross the river. There's no bridge, so I'm taking a punt, literally. Hi, I'm Craig.
I'm Peter Dixon's my name. Yes.
Oh, good to meet you.
Yes.
And you're the ferry. This rare punt, or ferry, is yet another example of man harnessing the might of the Clutha, but in a good way. Now tell us about this ferry, please. This is amazing.
It's been here since 1896 and it's been going sort of continuously ever since.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's the only one of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere.
In the Southern Hemisphere?
Yeah, the only one of its kind.
The river's current provides the power to get the punt across to the other side, with cables and a rudder to keep it on track. Can I have a go?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep, yep,
Oh, great.
yep.
Show me the ropes then.
Yeah.
You pull this forward a bit?
Yeah, swing around this way.
I don't actually know what I'm doing. What am I doing?
That's what changing the rudders. See, the rudders.
The rudders on the boat?
Yes. Yep.
And that's angulating us out into the stream?
Yep.
Hell, I'm going fast. I'm really steaming across the river.
Pull it this way, quick.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is a bit like one of these American Cup boats, and I feel a bit out of control on it, actually. This is a strong current, much stronger than I expected.
But we get in closer.
Yeah, I don't want to hit that wharf. I do not want to hit that wharf. That suddenly took off in there. There's a lot of power, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where the main current is over here.
Oh, OK, so I've gone through the worst of it.
Sort of backwash it when you're here, see?
Yep. Oh, it's a great way to get across the river, I must say. And the most remarkable thing about it in this day and age is that it's free, thanks to the Clutha District Council. Why don't we do this on more places? We're just using the power of the river.
Yeah, I know, but no one.
No energy.
Yeah, no one wants to use it.
This is thoroughly modern. I mean, this is a sustainable way to get across the river.
Yeah.
Cheaper than a bridge.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh, the dearest part of it is me.
Hey, well, it's been a great journey.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, gotta go.
Okay, mate.
Yeah.
Sure, the Tuapeka Punt is a bit of a novelty, but it's also a prime example of sustainability and using the river's power to good effect. Long may she run. As it rolls towards the sea, the Clutha splits into two branches, the Koa and the Matau, with a skinny piece of farmland, Inchclutha, in between. The historic settlement of Port Molyneux dates back to the 1840s, and it's here that I meet my friend, Southern author Neville Peat.
It was a thriving little town, you know, 2 pubs and a whole lot of stores, and then 1878, September, October 1878, a series of floods came through here, the likes of which we've never seen. They were unprecedented, and virtually the whole lot, all of the port silted up, and it was killed, you know, just killed off just within a matter of weeks.
I mean, my feeling is that the Clutha has been host to a lot of dreams of humans, some of which have been quite destructive on the river, whether it be hydro, whether it be dredging for gold. I mean, these are very big schemes that have had a big impact. What would be your vision for how we should treat the Clutha in the future?
One simple way, I mean, it's already been proposed and is under construction, at least at from the Wanaka end, is the idea of a walkway and maybe bikeway that would extend the length of the Clutha from Lake Wanaka down to the sea here. And I think when you introduce people to the edge of a river as mighty as the Clutha, you give them a sense of what it is, of the spirit of the river, of the river's natural values, obviously, apart from its scenic and landscape ones. And I think that is more than anything would help us appreciate its values.
I've reached the end of a long journey, one of the longest you can take on a river. The Clutha, our very biggest river. And I have sort of mixed, ambivalent feelings at this stage because I think humans have put a lot of dreams on this river, from the moa hunters to the greenstone gatherers to the gold hunters, and more recently, of course, those that have looked for hydro as a way to get something out of this river. And I think for all that we've done to this river, we also take a very positive feeling out of it, and people have just spoke nothing but fond thoughts about how wonderful the Clutha River is. It is a great river. It has a wildness. Yes, we've damaged it, but it has a future, and this river will keep going way beyond all of our crazy dreams.